Today I'm going to be talking with Rez, and I'm just sort of interested to see what it was sort of like for him as a newer Pyro player, see what his perspective is sort of on those old Pyro things like roundtables, just see maybe if he thinks there's a sense of class identity, and just sort of contextualize the discussion of Pyro that I sort of did with American in a more modern light, or at least from a more modern player who didn't have that past experience. You want to introduce yourself for a little bit?
Yeah, hey, I'm Rez. I've been playing since I think season 3 or season 4 of RGL, so I'm definitely not one of the old guard as far as pyros or players go. But I made an invite recently, so I think I have a pretty good idea of what it's like to have to move up, get up to the different divs and stuff like that. So yeah, pretty excited to talk about it.
Okay. And is Invite something you're going into next season as well?
Yeah, hopefully. I think my team's gonna be in quals, but we'll see what happens. But yeah.
I see. That's pretty interesting to hear. Okay. So, how do you get into TF2 on a casual level?
So really it started with, I was just a casual player, and I was like, it always, like, the comp scene had always, like, interested me. Like, I kind of knew it existed, but never really knew what it was outside of, like, TF2 Center or anything like that. It actually started because one of my friends that I met in a TF2 pub, he made a competitive team, like, a few years later, and he needed me to, like, ring at some point. I had no idea what I was doing, but I just showed up for, like, that scrim. I think it was Steel, too, which was awesome. And that's kind of how I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. And then, like, eventually that team, kind of formed into a different one. They were like, hey, you want to play Pyro? And I was like, sure. So that's how it kind of started. I had no clue what I was doing for the first 90% of it. But it was a lot of fun, and, like, that's kind of how I started out playing competitive.
And what season would that be?
That was season 3 of RGL. I think it was IM season.
Yeah, intermediate train station.
Yep, that was the OG train station.
And was Pyro something you were playing on a casual level before that?
Yeah, I had this, like, sort of idea of what, like, a main was, and I just decided that Pyro was gonna be my main because it's like, why not? It seems fun enough. I was good at WM1, so I was like, yeah, sure, this is awesome.
Base.
Yeah, and then once I got into competitive, I kind of did the same thing for a while until I figured out, you're not really supposed to do that. So if you talk to some of my teammates, they'll probably say I still do it, but yeah, Pyro was, like, always more or less my main. Really just enjoy the play style, I guess.
Okay. And what was it like for starting out in competitive? You said you didn't really have an idea of what you were doing.
Yeah, like, when I first started out, like, I think I got, like, a quick briefing by somebody on my team before they, like, put me in my first scrim, which was like, hey, protect the medic, and I was like, what? So I think at some point somebody called the flank over to go deal with something, and I went with them because I assumed I was the flank for some reason, and that was kind of like the, the moment where everyone kind of realized, well, he has no idea what's going on. So at that point I was like, all right, I guess I gotta sort of figure out what I need to do, and, like, I did, like, demo reviews with my teammates and stuff, and had to figure out kind of more or less on my own how to play Pyro.
I see. And was it sort of like jarring at all, sort of scary? Just like, did your teammates blame you for stuff that went wrong, for instance, with protecting the medic?
I mean, not really. Like, this was, like, IM, so not many of us didn't really know what was happening, anyways. So, like, I think my med blamed me a lot for dying, but, like, at this point, no one really knew what they were supposed to be doing, and it was kind of, like, all over the place. So, I never really took any of that seriously. It wasn't really a super, like, intimidating process, I guess. Like, everyone was kind of more or less on the same level.
I see. And would you say you've sort of refined your play? You've learned to play more seriously, less feedy since then?
God, I would hope so. Yeah, like, I would say out of, like, the more modern pyros, I definitely have a way more feedy play style. Like, I'm definitely dying a lot more than I really should be. That's still, something I'll probably eternally be trying to work on, but I definitely think I've gotten at least a little bit better since since IM season 3. So
Right. And is it sort of something that you've consciously tried to make the effort to do so, though? Or is it just you've sort of learned more subconsciously and you're just able to know better when you're going in?
yeah, I mean, I think, like, I figured out after, like, I died to the heavy for the 18th time. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't probably walk into him when he's fully revved or whatever. So, like, usually that, like at a certain point, I kind of, like, subconsciously realized maybe if I go in at this point, I'm just going to die and not do anything. So I've definitely fixed that, like, to a certain extent. And of course, like, I got cut from, like, my later teams and stuff like that for feeding way too much and just having, generally, just not playing the best pyro. And that was kind of, like, I guess, an awakening for me. Was just like, you gotta kind of get your shit together if you want to, get better at the game. And that's kind of when I was like, all right, I should probably start taking this seriously, and yeah, that's kind of where the transition came in.
Okay. And when you first started out, Scorch was unbanned. Was that something you ended up partaking in at all?
So Scorcha was a very interesting era because it was kind of what like I didn't really notice it as far like in my earlier days, but like later, especially like in like an advanced and I guess to an extent Challenger. I don't know if it was banned in Challenger or not, but
I believe right around then, yeah, like maybe before that season.
yeah, like that's when it was like really prevalent, and like I have this weird, I don't know, I never ran it because like I figured I kind of wanted, I've always had this like idea of like making myself different from like the rest of the pyros, and like running Scorch Shot, it seemed way too easy, so I ran Detonator before it was cool, so like it was very, and that was also because it let me jump into the enemy combo more often and die, but it was definitely like more prevalent. I was glad when I heard it was banned because
Yep.
it just made it very much like singled out what pyro secondary was going to be because like you couldn't really diversify to anything else. Like flare gun maybe if you're like just trying to like get raw damage out, but like scorch shot was just absolutely the best secondary you could run, and it made pyro a very simple process of like very passive spam scorch shot, and like that was it. So
So,
I was glad to see it got banned because it diversified the secondary options.
right, so it's something you agree was like kind of harmful as like from a developmental standpoint, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and like I still firmly believe like the best decision that the RGL staff ever made was banning the scorch shot and the Darwin's Danger Shield
Hey.
together.
It only
Like, that
took
was
forum threads, like
great.
tons and
It
tons
only
of them.
took, it only took a ton of forum threads,
Yeah,
but so does everything
good old
else. So.
forum warrior. Okay, okay. So yeah, from the start, it's like you just kind of wanted to be different. You kind of wanted to be unique, and you did a lot of like detonator tech. Yeah.
Yeah, and like it was also because like I didn't really know. Like I had like I think I got like one or two like demo reviews from like Hard Ass Johnny, and like that was like the oldest pyro I knew at the time. And like other than that, like I was kind of just like figuring it out by myself more or less, and like from other players that I would play against. So like I would say I haven't really had like the I guess it might just be the standard of like figuring it out yourself, but like I didn't really have anyone to like specifically learn from, so I had like more or less figure out the playstyle myself. And it's kind of like Pyro's playstyles aren't very different from each other. Like it's very much the same thing, which is just sit around your medic and not do a whole lot. But I've had to figure it out myself, and like I didn't have a lot of older pyros to learn from because I didn't know anybody, right? Like it
Right.
was me just coming up with like the rest of the pyros that I knew, and a lot of them have quit by now, but yeah, it was just that kind of stuff.
And is that something that ever sort of changed? Like, did you ever sort of start interacting with the older pyros?
Yeah, to an extent. Like, I especially think like once I got to like Challenger Advanced and I started playing against older pyros, people like American and them. Like, I've definitely like figured out a lot more and like learn more or less learn a bit more of like specific pyro stuff. But I would say that didn't really come until I was in the upper levels. I think once you're like main and below is kind of like whatever, like it kind of just whatever flies. It's a hard
Right.
time to get to know older players because most of them are above main.
Right. But then there's like definitely a sense of community once you kind of got past that point within the class. Yeah.
Yeah, like at that point, like I feel like most classes have this kind of thing where like they're all friends with each other. Like I know my medic is friends with all the medics on the other teams, and they all talk about like medic and whatnot. And I assume there's something like that on every class. But yeah, so I like to think that I've made at least a few friends in the pyro community more or less, especially with older players.
Uh, have you seen them sort of like collaborating recently, or do you think just like the roundtables are something that's sort of the past right now?
I think as of right now, the roundtables are something of the past. Like I think of everyone, like you've been the one most most into like collaborating and like coming up with new stuff. But I think like the roundtables on classes and stuff like that have definitely gone by the wayside as of recently because a lot of those pyros that like did them have quit or moved on from the game.
Right.
So yeah, not a whole lot now.
Do you think there's like a certain niche for that? Like, do you think there's benefit to having those?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's definitely a benefit to that. Like, if at the bare minimum, like I was doing, like I remember I think I watched Johnny's roundtable with like Melon and them, back when I was in like like intermediate in Maine, and I was like, wow, that's really good. But of course, it was like 5 years old at this point, so
Right.
it was a lot of it was a lot of like taking some of this stuff for granted. Like, of course, that was back before like the degree or nerf or anything like that. So, and the air blast changes and whatnot. So I think absolutely, like I think a roundtable is definitely very beneficial, especially for lower tier players who don't have those connections yet.
Right. Do you,
It's very helpful.
do you think it's the sort of thing that kind of helps get casual players interested in competitive as well? Like, was that something you ended up exploring before you moved to competitive at all?
Yeah, actually, because like it was like I didn't really like look into competitive play. Like I think I definitely heard of the roundtable before I started playing competitive, but it was more of like a niche thing. Like I didn't really know, and like it just comes back to like not really knowing how competitive works at all. Like, um, and like the roundtables were like, okay, these are people who like know exactly what they're doing. Like they've gone through like all these seasons and stuff, and they know what pyro is about and stuff. And like that was something I saw. I was like, huh, I kind of want to do that because like at this point, like I consider myself like a pyro main, but this is like pubs, like this is like whatever. And like so knowing that, I thought it was really like something that I could increase my skill in, I guess, or something to work towards. So I think it definitely
Right.
helps.
Okay. And so your pyro play style has always been sort of out there. Is that something that you usually get like judged a lot, like when going against like other pyros or like on your own team or by enemy teams?
Oh,
Is
absolutely. Like it's my I'm not I will never call my playstyle good because it's like it's not even like I wouldn't even call it a playstyle really. It's just regular pyro, but I walk into the enemy team a lot more. And like I would say like 30% of the time I get a kill or like it works out. So I would definitely say like people judge me for it, like absolutely. Like I watch like streams and stuff like what the fuck is this pyro doing? I'm like yeah, that's fair because I don't know what I'm
mm,
doing either. So no, like I think I've definitely like I was cut from train like the OG train station. Like when they went advanced, they cut me for someone else, which totally fair. I looked at my POVs back then. I was kind of terrible, but like that kind of stuff is like I'm not gonna play the victim here because I'm absolutely the problem. But it was it's just something that I've had to work with. And like I've always been trying to fix that.
right.
Trying to get better. But at this point, I think I've more or less solidified it into not a terrible idea. It's just not a great idea either. So.
So besides the pyro roundtables, were there any like real big like inspirations on you in your earlier days as a player?
It's funny because like I would call it was mostly like Hard Ass Johnny or like Wispy the pyroman that were however whatever his name is at this
Yeah,
point.
Whisper the Whispering Pyro, I think it is.
Yeah, like I think I saw his videos on YouTube. And I like his stuff with like flame mojo and like inheriting momentum and stuff like that. Like that really was like, wait, I can use this in a competitive sense. And like I think it was actually a combination of that, um, and like Sketchek and Christian Ma, like those like pub pyros with the extinguisher and like detonator
Hmm.
jumps and stuff like that. Like I've more or less made a combination of those two like theories on pyro, like one being like
Right,
competitive
right.
playstyle, and one being like the super feeding, jumping into the enemy team, getting extinguisher kills and whatnot. And I've kind of just taken those two and turned and used those both in my play. Like that's how I like got pretty decent at detonator jumping and stuff like that. Um, so I would say like those two are really the big inspirations.
All right, for sure, yeah. Is that do you think you've been able to sort of like evolve on that as time has gone on? Do you feel like you've sort of mastered that more in the present day?
Yeah, absolutely. Like when I first started detonator jumping, like I had no clue that like holding right click made you like go. You could do like sideways, like get more lateral momentum and stuff like that. So I'd absolutely say like I've adapted and like I've added my I don't know, as big of an ego as it sounds, like I've added my own little stuff to it, right? In sort of creating this weird play style. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely added a lot to it, I think, but it's not anywhere near. There's definitely ways to go with it. Like I need to like work on timing and stuff like that. But yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Yeah. Is that something that's sort of been like especially different for you going into Invite at this point?
Yeah, so like invite was always something like when I first started playing, like I saw invite was the top, and like that's something that like once I was in, like I realized I really enjoyed doing this. I was like I really wanted to, I really wanted to like get there. Like invite was always like this achievement for me. And that kind of made me like I guess very mercenary as far as like getting on teams goes. Like you can ask BBL, like the team I'm playing for right now. Like I've like tried out for better teams while I was playing for them like multiple times. Absolute dick move. Like not something that like a friend would do. But like that was just my mindset for trying to get into invite like as quick as possible because like that's what I saw as like being the best and like being very
Hmm.
good and like
Okay.
a symbol of my work I guess.
And,
Um,
do you think that's something consistent you find throughout the competitive scene, just like that sort of mentality?
No, not at all. Actually, I think there's like maybe a few people that are like that, but I think a lot of people just do friend teams. Like I know, like there's people who just like who don't want to go invite. Like in a lot of quals times, there's teams that don't want to go invite, so they'll like not throw necessarily, but not really try really hard.
No, they
Because
definitely throw.
well, like I was on God of Blast, and that team was hard throwing quals, but
Yeah.
no, like
Name a
teams that
calls
like
without
don't.
throwing.
True, but like teams that are that like want to move up or don't want to move up and like would rather go like 8-0 in advance than 0-7 in invite.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, like it's I don't know. I'm sure there's like multiple different theories on people wanting to be there, but you
Right.
know, I think that's something that I like as a newer player. That's something new that's showed up. Like all the older players at this point, like they've already like people from UGC, like UGC and everything. They're like they've already achieved it. Like they've already gotten to like like the top of UGC. They don't really care anymore. Like they'll play advanced, they'll play whatever. They just want to have fun for the game. Like the newer players, I think, really just want like a lot of them really want to get to invite. Like that's their goal. Like that's what they want to do and stuff. And you'll see that a lot in like main and like IM because those are like the lower areas where people are like I really want to get better and stuff like that. So.
Hmm. Right, right. Okay. How do you think Arjo can sort of like help solve the issues they have with calls of teams just like throwing or just not taking it that seriously because they want to go down in a division?
Yeah, it's kind of an unsolvable problem, right? Like you need like or however many teams in invite. Like you need this many teams in invite, and you can't force players that don't want to be there. Like that's how the imposters got in last season. No offense to anyone on the imposters, but like they were probably not supposed to be in invite. Like they're better teams. Like advanced teams were beating them, but like they were
Yep.
the only ones who wanted to go invite as opposed to like the top 3 or 4 teams that have advanced. So it's kind of an unsolvable solution where you don't have enough teams that want to go invite. Um, so I think they're doing the best they can, like with the like rules instituted on throwing and everything, and like being placed where you're supposed to be. But like sandbagging is going to be like an eternal issue. I think like
Okay.
it's not really until like you get teams that like are really driven to like be the best and stuff. You're gonna have a hard time fixing that problem.
Right. So how did reaching invite like impact your interactions with the community? Was it the sort of thing where it's like other pyres, even if you sort of played the same way or like other people, magically just started treating you as like somebody more authoritative, kind of?
I think people who knew me before I got to invite treated me more or less the same, which is to be expected. Like it's not like I became infinitely better when I went invite.
Right.
But like having the invite thing on your profile, like it gives you a certain I don't know. To me, it gives me an ego for like no reason. I don't understand why it gives me an ego, but like with like newer players, they'll see that and like okay, I guess he kind of knows what he's talking about. Even though I went 0-7, like you guys he kind of knows what he's talking about. It says invite on his profile. I'm sure it means something. But like yeah, people who knew me before, like I think as far as like invite, I think pyro like as far as like needing like how you play pyro at a high div, it kind of caps out around like high advanced. Like I think in my opinion, like pyros between high invite and low invite are like more or less interchangeable because pyro on paper is a very simple class. You just need to like protect the med and like deny shit. Like that's more or less what pyro is. And yeah, there's extra stuff you can add, like pyros who are really good at like say predicting the spy or predicting bombs or like denying Ubers really well or being in Ubers really well. But like that's all secondary to the main facts of like you just need to be good at these 3 things. So I think like around high advanced low invite, people are kind of reaching the peak, like the peak of pyro potential. Like
Okay.
and like at that point, you can kind of and since pyro's not that difficult of a class to play, you can take someone who plays like soldier or heavy and like, hey, can you play pyro for my team? I kind of just need to pyro for my invite team. Like, yeah, sure. Like if you know someone who's skilled at the game, they can play pyro. Um, so of course, like that's something that I found like when I was trying to go invite, like there were teams that would put up LFPs and I would like apply for all of them, and like they would just like it ended up they just put their buddy on because they know him and he's like fine at pyro. And that's all you really
Yeah.
need. Because like it's not like demo or sniper where like if they're it's a real like test of who's better at this class. Like, because pyro is a very team centered class. If your team's not doing well, you're not going to do well, and like it's not really a game changing kind of class. So that's something that I definitely noticed as far as like a skill level goes for pyros. But
Right.
yeah.
So you would say it was mostly just like networking and not pissing people off?
Oh, absolutely. That's all invite is, honestly. It's literally just networking, like and not making and like making the right
Yeah.
friends and make like and not making the wrong enemies. So, that's
Okay.
kind of more or less what it is.
So what are some of your sort of community concerns coming out with like a fresher pair of eyes?
Like for as far as like the community as a whole goes.
Yeah, like the community as a whole, and then we can also talk more about like RGL in specific, or like just the Highlander players, like maybe casually as a whole as well. Just like however sort of approach you want to have.
Yeah, I mean, like the competitive community obviously doesn't have a great reputation with like the casual community, and the casual community is most of the TF2 community. Like in all honesty, and that just I don't really know when that started exactly, but I think it comes down to more of TF2 not really being geared towards competitive. Like it's very fun to play competitively, but it's objectively not designed to be, right? So like that just comes down to for, like people seeing us like as like elitist or whatever. And like yeah, that'll come in any kind of game. But like with the recent changes, like well, I say recent, but it's like been like 5 years, I guess. But like since competitive was instituted as like a playlist, people have like had like a more negative view because they're like, oh, look at all this stuff, like look at all this stuff the competitive community has done to our game for
Right.
no reason. It doesn't even work. Um, so like I don't know what like that animosity like I kind of understand it as far as like the differences go. Um, and I like it's again it's like a hard problem to fix, right? It's just a
Right.
completely different way people take the game. Like casual players don't really care like like the balancing of weapons all that much. Like they can't really. It's like they take it casually. They don't really care what happens like the minute details. Whereas competitive players will like agonize over every single small thing, which makes sense, right? Because like that small thing can change how a game or a class is played entirely, right?
Right.
So it's like yeah, it's just kind of a difference in theory. And it's kind of hard to breach that subject, honestly.
Right.
Like it's very hard to find a solution for
So,
it.
what do you think of like the top of the game? You said it is very like networky. How do you feel about the people though?
I mean, oh, like by and large, people are fine. Like the attitudes you'll get sometimes, and like some like toxicity, like that all just kind of comes with seeing yourself as like the best player. Like seeing yourself as we like when you have like so many seasons in invite, you can say, yeah, I'm one of the like better players. So that comes with like the ego of being, well, I know more than everyone else does. So why should I, listen to them at all? And that whole mentality kind of ends results like inevitably results in like a, oh, I don't really care what these guys like what anyone else really says.
Hmm.
It ends up with like a bit of a toxic problem.
And do you think that ends up creating more of a divide between casual and competitive?
Absolutely, yeah. Like I think like the closest we'll ever get between casual and competitive is like the newcomer and like IM players, like the players that like know enough about the game to know how it's played competitively, but they're not to the point where they can say, yeah, I'm definitively better than everyone else because I play competitively. Because like you're IM, like it's not like the peak of TF2, but um, yeah, like I would say it definitely doesn't help.
Hmm. Do you think the top of the game are like role modeling enough for a competitive to be in a healthy state, or do you think they're too kind of conflicted with their own self-interests a lot of the time in the community?
I think it's a lot of self interest. I mean, that just comes from this being like like by and large a self interested like league, right? Like like the top players just play because they want to have fun, right? Like it's
Right.
not once you've won first, like once you've gotten first and invite like so many times, at this point you're just playing for fun. Like you don't need any more like medals or you don't need any more like reason to say you're better than everyone else. You just play for fun. So you don't really. Obviously I'm not an invite player, like or not a top player, so I can't say this for certain. But this is like the way I see it is like they can say, well, I mean, like I don't particularly care what happens like individually as long as I'm allowed to still play this game and have fun. Like I can't say I have. They wouldn't say they have a huge, like concern for the rest of the league.
And
Um,
do you,
but
do you think that's something that would need to change in order for competitive to reach a healthy state again, or for casual and competitive to sort of come together and find a mutual ground?
I mean, it just comes back to like incentive to play, right? Like I think
Right.
absolutely, if you had like a different incentive than oh, I just want to have fun and play the game, you would definitely get different opinions and stuff. Like you would definitely have people playing because they want to like help out the league and play to make competitive more
Right.
accessible and stuff like that.
Well, what if the incentive was to sort of revitalize interest in the game and keep the game we all love and care about alive?
I mean, absolutely. Like the problem with that is, I think we all, to an extent, agree with that. Like everyone would support that. But as far as like getting people to actively support it, like people who would like go out of their way to do stuff for that, it's like like I wouldn't say too vague, but like too immaterial. Like people won't see that and go, "That's a reason for me to play." Like they'll see that as like, yeah, I agree with that. That's something I'll do. Like it's the same thing as like agreeing with a political party but not voting for it because you just can't find the time to go vote for it or something like that.
I see.
So I agree that's a really good reason to do it, but it's not. I don't think it would motivate enough people to fix the game.
So what can we do then, as a community, as the players of it?
I mean, like I think weirdly enough, I think like if you had some sort of prize pool or something like that, like a reason to play Invite other than just for playing Invite, because that's kind of what it is, right? Like the prize pools are minuscule and like not that's not why anyone plays the Invite. So like I think like if you had like a reasonable prize pool that would make people want to like get to the next level. Like this is a very roundabout way, but like if you made like a prize for winning Invite or like getting second or third, like being in playoffs. Like if you made that and you made it desirable for people, that would mean more people would want to play Invite, meaning more people would want to be moving up, like getting up to the divs. You wouldn't have problems with people throwing quals anymore, and you wouldn't have like a stagnant kind of Invite because Invite's more or less been like the same six or so teams, with the exception of like a move up
Right.
team every time. And like that would lead to more like prize pools would allow for like more more advertisement, more people would like tune in to watch because there's stakes that like
Right.
there's actual stakes for it.
So would you say that the top of the competitive scene is very important to the bottom as well? Like it sort of helps define it. It sort of sets the precedent going downwards. Like would you take a top to down like approach?
Yeah, what trickle down balance or whatever. I honestly would, because like at that point it shows people like a lot of the teams will adapt to whatever invites you're using, right? Like lower teams will see a strat used by an invite team, like say tunnel hold on Swiftwater. Like they'll say, oh, that's like an interesting hold, and they'll try it in their scrims, and that leads to like a difference in the play style in lower divs. And obviously lower divs have a lot of chaos because no one is
Right.
fully like they don't have the years and like understand exactly what's going on in the game, but like that leads to innovation and stuff. But like if you balanced around the top of the community and like added like prize pools and reasons like motivation for people to move up through the divs and stuff like that, that would absolutely, I think, change a lot of the lower, and like it comes back to like that would just be more exposure, right? Like more people would
Right.
tune into the streams, more people would watch the YouTube channel, like more people would want to play competitive, and that would increase like that. And I think if more people wanted to play competitive and saw it as something like they want to do, there would be less animosity towards it. Because
Right.
a lot of the casual community is just like, I don't want to fucking do competitive. Like it ruins the spirit of the game or whatever. And like that's fully reasonable of them, but like they've never tried it. And like I think if you got someone into a team with like 6 or 9 people and like that's what they want and they were working towards something they wanted to do in like a game that we all love, right? Then I think that would absolutely do some stuff for the communities.
Okay. And do you think just like having a healthy competitive, like having a healthy top of the game, helps out the bottom in comparison as well? Like, do you think just having a healthy competitive helps casual develop as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think if you have like the top of invite more like the top like just invite if you have invite more closely monitored and like more and people took it seriously and stuff like that, then the lower divs would say then like the admins and mods of lower divs would take it more seriously,
No,
and
no.
the players would take it more seriously and stuff
I,
like
I
that.
meant like on a casual level though. Do you
On
think
on a casual level.
do you think
Yeah,
it's something
I
that
think
benefit?
I think yeah, because that's actually a really good question because you don't actually know, right? Like
Right.
if an invite was taken super seriously, because like they can't tell the difference between a team trolling and a team taking it seriously. Like, and when a team is like doing some dumb shit, like re-pushing back on the first on upward or something like that, like a casual player will see that and go, I don't know if that's part of the game or not. Like they can't tell.
But do you think on principle just having the top of the game care about it more and sort of take more community initiatives, try and be more proactive in the community, do you think that would sort of trickle back down and help out in a casual sense as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think it would take a lot of cooperation. Like I
I
think you would
agree.
need a lot of the upper, like a lot of invite to do it. Like there's several invite players that do that already. Um, but it's just like the difference of like volume, I guess, right? Like it's kind of hard to get
Right.
that down to the lower players.
So, do you think that would be something that would sort of benefit from like content creators coming together, like casual and competitive content creators doing collaborations, sorts of like working on video series together? Do you think that would help bridge the gaps for their audiences a bit?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Like I think one of the big issues with competitive is just like lack of visibility. Like no one really like casual players don't really know what's going on with it, right? So I think if you definitely had some content creators from casual and competitive sides get together and do something, that would absolutely do a lot for like both the competitive community and like the TF2 community as a whole.
Right. And do you think that's something we sort of lack on in the present day, like those sorts of community events and cups compared to the past? Like, for instance, pros versus community, so on and so forth. Like those sorts of things, those sorts of events that you would see on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I remember seeing those back in like what was it like 2017 or something like that, like way back. And like those things were always like super like because I didn't even know there was a competitive version, like a competitive way to play TF2 until like I saw stuff like that.
Right.
So like absolutely, I think that would definitely help.
So it's like the issue we're sort of seeing is that like a lot of people do care, but then it's like we don't actually want to make like other people care kind of as well. Like we don't really come together on it.
Yeah, like it's the same thing as like anything else. Like it's really hard to just get people involved and get people invested enough to want to do it themselves. And we don't have that like that mobility, I guess.
Okay. So let's see. Do you have any experiences with just like pug groups at all?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of pugging and like mostly like if you ask most players why they pug, like a lot of them will say it's like for fun. But like if you ask like lower div players, they'll either say it's for fun or they'll say like for connections, right? Like
Right.
I did pugs like Senate pugs and stuff like that because a lot of invite players are playing pugs, and a lot of them and like pugs are a really good way to just play with them and like get to know them. Like I know a lot of people were picked up because of like the skill they showed in pugs. And like obviously it's really hard to do that if you're not at that level. Like if you're like, cause those pugs like while they're like they're still pickup games, they're still like invite players playing those games. So it's really hard to like go in as like say a main player and perform well enough to be like on the radar of like an invite player. Like and like pugs are by and large like just for fun more or less. Like there's a lot of meme stuff going on. No one really takes it super seriously. And so it's a double-edged sword, right? Like you can go in and you can get noticed, and you can get like you can make the connections, make the networking, make friends with the invite players, so that when you eventually do become that skilled, you can go in and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a team," and like your friend will be like, "Hey, I need a pyro. Yeah, I'll pick you up." But like of course you can go in as like a main player, and like it's really difficult, like honestly. But yeah, like pugs are just a very interesting like dynamic, I think, between like people who are doing it for fun and stuff, and like there are a few people like trying to network and whatnot.
Right. Do you think they're an important tool for the community? Like maybe they could be helped to bridge the gap between casual and competitive as well, like with
Yeah,
RGL plugs.
no, RGL. I think RGL pugs was a great idea. I
All right.
don't actually exactly know what happened with them because I never really paid attention to it. But I think it's a great idea for trying to get people more into competitive and showing them like what it's actually like. Um,
Okay. Do you think pickup games as a tool, like as a whole, are sort of misused as a tool usually? Like, do you think people just like intentionally kind of like sabotage them out of their own self-interest?
I think it entirely depends on the tone you set, right? Like most pugs, like most of the pug groups I'm in nowadays are like they're entirely just for people to have fun. Like they're not organized to like scout players or anything like that. Because a lot of them it's just invite and like high advanced players just messing around playing different classes. Um, and I wouldn't say it's misused exactly, but I definitely think there's room for them to be
Oh no,
used in like a more of a different manner.
I meant the people who just sort of like come in to just like kind of troll, circle jerk it up, stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah, well those guys, yeah, well like that's just stupid. Like that's against what the pug is. Like the pug is it's a game. Like it's a pickup game. It's you're playing competitive TF2, but in a way that you like couldn't get away with normally. And like people who like just come in just to screw around and screw it up is it's kind of like I want to call it like it's kind of what the rest of the people think about it, right? Like if everyone doesn't really care and is having fun with what they're doing, then yeah, it's fine. But if, like it's very clear that the rest of the pug doesn't like want that happening and stuff like that, then you're just being a dick at that point.
So would you say
So
would you say this like that sort of sentiment along with just like the whole community caring thing is just sort of something that ends up being a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy? Like you start trolling or you stop caring, and because you do, it's like other people do that as well.
yeah, no, absolutely. It's like the groupthink mindset, right? Like you just don't
Right.
want to do anything that would go against what you assume the group thinks. Um,
So
so
what can we do to sort of deviate from that and sort of become more individualized to do our parts for the community again?
that is a tough question because like that comes with just being in a video game, right? Like none of us are in the same room with each other. The internet provides us a layer of anonymity and makes us more more susceptible to just being stupid and like because you can like look at my fucking brother like Sandwich King. He doesn't care at all what people think of him at all.
The
He's
RGL
like,
villain.
The RGL, he's an idiot all of the time for no reason, and he just thinks it's super fun, and like people think it's really funny, and like like more power to him, and like, but that's just like the difference of like ideas of how like how they approach the community. Like I approach it as like, this is like it's like a people it's like a group of friends, right? Like we're all here for like play video games and just have fun. And he approaches it as like I just want to mess around and make friends, and that's more power to him. So it's just like it's very difficult to do with the layer of anonymity you get from being online and stuff like that to motivate people to do anything in kind of a group sense.
I see. And do you have much experience with just sort of like Discords, how they're sort of used as a chat? Do you think most of those interactions end up being like meaningful, or do you think it just ends up being like a lot of pointless interaction that doesn't really help things at all?
I mean, I think definitely it's meaningful. Like again, it comes down to like your personal ideas, right? Like if you're someone who has a very stable like like IRL life, like someone who's like got a ton of friends, got a job, like doing everything normal, and you just do this as a side thing. Like I don't think that's that meaningful. I think it's still really nice, but like you don't take it as like your entire social life or anything. Whereas if you have someone who like doesn't have a lot of like doesn't have a super stable IRL life, like people who don't have a ton of friends in real life, they'll take that as like Discord's like their version of a social life, right? Like so I think that has a ton of in that case you get a ton of meaningfulness from all those like interactions and stuff. So I think Discord's it's I think it's a great tool. Like everything, it's a tool, right? It depends on how you use it.
Do you think it's something you end up seeing misused at all? Though, like let's say in like larger Discords, like League Discords, do you think it's just like something that people actively try and use to sort of bother other people?
I mean that like a league Discord, like a huge Discord, is more or less emblematic exactly of what like the anonymity is. Like that's not only like you being on the internet, that's you being in a huge crowd of people on the internet. Like that's the perfect position to be in to just not care and like do whatever you want. So like that, I think those are not, I would say, emblematic of meaningful interactions you can get from people in the league and stuff like that and online.
Do you think that ends up being a negative sort of experience, though, just like looking at those more public league Discords or something like the RGL meme Discord and seeing how people interact in there? Like, do you think it's the sort of thing that does genuine damage and that burns people out?
I think it actually absolutely can do that. But like, it comes down to the old like people like cyberbullying thing, which is just like you just leave the Discord or something like that, right? Like make your own Discord with the smaller group of people that you actually like genuinely enjoy talking to. Like it's just like it's an unsolvable problem, right? With those huge like circle jerk Discords.
What if it's the sort of thing where it's like people target you in there, even if you're like sort of thing, though it's just like they use that to sort of just stir up drama like that?
Yeah, like that shit. That is what will kill a community, right? Like those kind of people who would do that kind of stuff is just.
So, what can we do about that though?
It's kind of unsolvable. Like people can infinitely create alt accounts. Like people can infinitely like it's until people get bored, they're not going to stop doing it, right? And like it just comes with the territory, right, of being on the internet, being like more or less anonymous. And it. I don't think as that's like what can we do about it is more of a question for like humanity as a whole as opposed to like specific just like community stuff, because
let's get philosophical.
We're getting philosophical on the Blizz Tank podcast. But yeah, no, it's something that's hard to solve.
What do you say? It's just sort of important to try and take a step back and refocus on yourself as an individual and see how like your actions are sort of affecting other people, even if anonymous. What do you say that could be the solution?
I mean, it could definitely be a solution, but getting someone to do that when they're like deep into like screwing with someone at this point is very hard to do. Like you can't. That you like if you're the person being screwed with, you're in a very difficult situation to make them do anything. And like having a third party involved is not going to really do much, honestly.
Right.
Unless, so unless the person already respects that third party or something like that, they'll actually listen to them. You're not going to be able to do anything.
So it's like not something the league can do. It's like something we as people need to like try and tackle. If
like RGL bans, like if like RGL bans as a concept are fine. Like you don't want bad players in the mix, but like so much of RGL at this point is like now located in like pug groups and private discords and stuff like that. That like it's not as impactful, and I think that's less of a league thing and more of like just a general community thing, like people of competitive players.
Do you think that's something that's like sort of hard to deal with these days, like with all the prominence of these Discord, like of Discord? Like, do you think that was something that was maybe easier in the past to just sort of get those influences out of the community or make them less influential with a ban?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like that just comes down to like the community being smaller, right? Like if the less
Right,
people there
right.
are, it's easier to remove them from like an RGL ban back in the day, like when RGL like was taken seriously but still not that big. Was like that was serious. Like that like that was like, all right, you're done. Like you can't do anything. But like nowadays, like so many band players are still pugging and stuff like that. That is, it's not really that impactful to them because they're just there to have fun, like on the internet. And, like that includes like playing competitive TF2 and also just fucking with people. And like if you're RGL band, you just play pugs instead. So it's a mess more or
Right.
less. But it's just hard to do.
How do you feel about that in pub groups? So like people sort of get banned for like not for like out of game sort of stuff, like how they interact socially with other people in RGL. Do you think that's something they should be kept out of community groups like pub groups for?
I mean, when it comes to pug groups, like that's not a league thing, right? Like that's entirely up to the
Right.
people who
But
lead
like if
who
the
lead the
community is
groups.
trying to care, like if you want to get those negative influences out of the community, do you think
If the community
that's
is, if the community is like dedicated to doing this, then I assume at that point like they'll just stop playing the pugs with people like with those people in them. But
hmm.
yeah,
But
it's hard to do.
do you think it's worth trying to like sort of match that though is the question.
You mean like as far as like
The out of game like bans that aren't for something like cheating, do you think that's something worth trying to mirroring for the sake of the community? If like the ban is justified?
in pug groups? I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely, but of course, once again, it just comes back to the pug. Like if the pug runner or like the guy who's in front of the and like the leader of the Discord is like, yeah, but he's still my friend though. He's not getting banned. Like
Yeah.
then like at that point, that just comes down to people. Like if you want that to really stop, you just need the people to stop playing those pugs. And again, that's really hard to motivate anyone to do on a large scale
Right.
basis because it would require everyone to be super dedicated to that ideal and stuff like that.
Okay.
So.
How do you feel about this sort of culture around bands right now? It's like everybody just like all that person's friends just like try and like get that person unbanned, especially if it's in like a community group. Do you
I
think?
mean, like, I think that's a inevitable backlash of banning someone.
Right.
Like no one's like the only people who've been unbanned have been unbanned for like reasonable, like they've been unbanned for good reasons.
How do you feel about
Um,
that sort of cultural movement, though? Do you think that's something that ends up like hurting community groups at all when people get unreasonable over it?
I mean, sure, but like eventually those people get bored of it, right? Like
Hmm.
they even if they're like the best friends with the guy and he's banned, they'll like crusade to have him unbanned for like maybe a couple weeks, like a couple months if they're like really dedicated. Because at that point it just turns into a meme, right? Like after a few
Right.
weeks, it's like they're not actually trying to do it; they're just doing it because it's something to do. So like at that point, like whatever. Like no one really gives them that much pays that much mind. Like after the first week or so. And at that point, like I wouldn't say it's particularly harmful to a community at all, unless like they're specifically like bullying people about it. But you know,
Hmm.
it's just an inevitable
But
inevitable backlash.
do you think maybe you could see it having an impact on the people who actually have to deal with all of that, who have to administrate through that?
Absolutely, yeah. But I like as callous as it sounds, it's kind of like when that's kind of what you sign up for, right? Like when you're
Oh
when
yeah,
you're
for sure.
in you're moderating the internet essentially, or trying to, and like you could ban them, and like you'll get some shit for it, which everyone does. If you make a big decision like that, you're gonna get some shit for it. Um, and it's just that's the internet. Like you just can't do much about it. You just gotta live with like ignore it and wait till it to go away. Cause
Right.
like people
Just
get
like
bored very easily on the internet.
and
So
just like try to find a support system, yeah, so it doesn't overwhelm you.
Hmm.
Okay, that's definitely reasonable. Okay. I think that's a pretty good coverage of that topic. Yeah, that sort of community sentiment.
yeah.
So do you have any experiences with mentoring or being mentored?
Yeah, like I said, I was I guess sort of mentored by Hard Ass Johnny. Like I got some demo reviews from him, and he kind of like taught me like what a pyro's supposed to be doing like at any given moment.
Hmm.
Like like if your med, like if you just killed their med, you're watching for sacks, you're watching for spy. Like if the
And
Ubers have just been pops, you're watching for spy behind and stuff like that.
was that like foundational to you as a pirate player?
Absolutely, like absolutely. Like he like those I think like 2 or 3 demo reviews. It turned me from like an idiot with a flamethrower into like someone who actually kind of knew what they were doing as far as like in any part of the game went, and like spy time and stuff like that. Like he taught me that, and I would say that was fairly influential. Like that more or less like made me. It set the basis for what I could like get work on. Right before that, I was just like flailing around and trying to find random stuff that worked. but that like bare minimum of what a pyro should be doing, like set the basis for me to get better at those specific things and let me get better into the league and stuff like that.
Okay. And then did you have you had any interesting experiences with mentoring other people?
Yeah, I've tried, like I've made some mentoring posts in the Discord and stuff, and I've mentored I think like 5 or 6 different people, and like mentoring on pyro is quite easy, I would say. Like it's really just the same shit that I was mentored on, right? Like it's like you need to understand what exactly pyro does, which is like, when you should be spy checking, when you should be watching for bombs, and like when you should be calling spy time. And like when you should be denying Ubers, and when you should be playing your life, or when you shouldn't care, and like those small things more or less. And like usually I'm mentoring like main level people, or like I am ish, and like usually I don't have to instill those basics in them because at this point they've already more or less figured out, whether it be from other mentors or from their teammates or stuff like that. And at that point, I'm more or less just like fine tuning it. Like you should be spy checking right now. Like you should be doing that more. You should be doing it less. You don't have to worry about looking behind right now. You should not be looking forward right now and stuff like that. And that usually only takes like 1 or 2 demo reviews, and then they kind of got it down because it's really quite simple as far as like a class basis goes. So absolutely, like I think if I had more experience with like newcomer players who have no clue how to play the class, it would be a lot more involved and a lot more like here's how you should do this, here's how this works, and like here's how the map goes and stuff like that. But yeah, like my experience has just more been fine tuning stuff.
That's fair. And is there ever something you've really like collaborated with other players on?
Not particularly. Like I said, it's a fairly simple on paper. It's a fairly simple class. Like in practice, it's also still more simple than like other classes. But you know, so I wouldn't say I really ever had to collaborate. Like never had to like take a player to someone else. Like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? I don't understand how he's doing this.
I meant like out of I meant out of game, just talking like experienced pyro, and just sort of going through like different parts of the pyro class, just sort of collaborative discussions. Like let's say a Discord where it's just like you talk about sort of mentorly things together, but then not necessarily a roundtable.
Yeah, like I think I had that with like Wispy's Discord server. Like I think back when I joined it, it was still fairly solid. Like I think it's kind of dead now. Like not a whole lot of conversations going that are really pyro specific. But like back in the day, like that's when I was like, there were people like discussing, like it was back when Obliv was still in band and still played, and like River was still around. And like they were like, and him and those two and like Johnny would be discussing like pyro stuff.
Right.
And like I learned some stuff from that too, definitely. But like this was back when I wasn't like in any sort of position of authority on pyro topics.
Do you think that was like something beneficial to have as a resource back then, though?
I mean, absolutely. I'm sure if you looked at my messages reading that server, like you'd find like stuff back from like 2 or 3 years ago.
I can't because I got banned by Snoodles.
That's tough. Yeah, Snoodles. Okay, yes, Snoodles was a person, but yeah, like
carry on.
It was yeah, like I went back like 2 or 3 years ago, and like I've asked like random questions, like well, how do I like how what's the most optimal form of spy checking? Like, is it worth it in denying an Uber to like knock the medic away and disconnect them from the demo, or like even trying to do that, and stuff like that, and like very specific stuff. Like that was a great resource for me. But unfortunately, like it's kind of like gone downhill. Like at this point, I kind of gotten all I needed out of the server. So, and there's not a lot of people in there like really asking pyro specific questions. But yeah.
Do you think that's something that would be sort of like beneficial to try and revitalize, to just have that sort of community for the class?
I mean, absolutely. If there's like any kind of demand for it, like I haven't seen a lot of like newer pyros really being in need of that.
Right.
Like pyro at this point is fairly well understood as far as like the community goes, and they can pretty much just like get their buddy like, hey, all right, I need you to sit here, like spy check, and then like air blast with the rockets, and like that's
right. Do you think specifically like for the more casual side of things though, there would be benefit?
On the more casual side, absolutely. But like again, it's like I don't know if like the casual players are really that dedicated to like getting to know and getting better at a specific class because they really want to. Because like it's casual, right? Like it doesn't really matter. Like it's like at that point, it's like any other video game, right? Like you just do it until you're good at it. But
okay. Let's see. Mentoring out of the way, pug. Do you have any interesting experiences with like the RGL staff? Is there anything you think they do particularly well or poorly at?
So like the staff, I think all in all, like do a fairly good job. Like as far as you can expect from people who aren't being paid to do this and do this like entirely voluntarily. Like I don't really care what they do, as long as like you don't hear about them when they're doing good, right? You only ever hear about RGL staff when they've done something stupid, and usually like that's fixed pretty quickly, or if it's not fixed, it's not that big of a deal.
Do you think that's something we see with the community as a whole? Like the good never really gets talked about, and it's like we only focus on the bad, which maybe brings the community as a whole down.
Yeah, but it's like a psychology thing, right? Like
Yeah.
everyone knows like bad news travels around the world before like good news can get its shoes on, right?
So,
Like
what do you think we could do to sort of help spread that sense of positivity and get people behind things with good news, though?
I mean, it's like it's again, it's hard to do, right? Like it's the same thing as like being a moderator for literally anything else, like a Reddit mod or a Discord mod. Like those all have super negative connotations behind them, right?
mods.
Like those all have super negative connotations around them, right? And that just comes with having to police like internet idiots the whole time. Like you're gonna get some shit for it. And like your good decisions are mostly gonna go unrewarded. And like you're not being compensated, you're not being paid to do this. Like it's just like it's what happens, and it's hard to like well like as far as like good news goes, like we're gonna be like, hey, look at this guy, he banned a cheater. Let's get some good news for him. But of course, like that cheater's buddies gonna be like, he wasn't cheating, what the hell? And then like it ends up in a whole like clusterfuck again of random shit. So, it's kind of difficult to do, and like I think as far as like by and large, the RGO mods have done a great job, right? Like they've banned a few, like they've made a few incorrect decisions, like banning the wrong people, like getting rid of the wrong stuff, keeping in the wrong stuff. But like by and large, compared to what could have gone wrong, I'll take it, right?
Right.
Um,
Okay.
it's like one thing, but like the specific interaction that particularly annoys me is like I've had like 2 or 3 seasons at this point where like we have been, like my team has been value like my team is consistently beating another team in scrims, right? Like consistently 3-0s, like it's more or less a roll at this point. Like look at the Inquisition team, right? Like that team did not belong in Invite, but because of like the name recognition and like the strength, like because like the RGL mods, they don't look at scrims, they look at name history, like they look at names, they look at their history and divisions and like decide from there, and they don't take into consideration like how those teams are performing together, like how they don't look at scrims. Like I think the fact they don't look at scrims, yeah, it'd be a terrible thing to have to do to look at the scrims for teams when you're trying to decide whether to put them in quals or not, or like put them in whatever division. But like I've been like 2 or 3 seasons where my team's been put into a lower div when we consistently are beating 2 or 3 of the teams in the div above us, just because none of us have the name recognition. And that comes down to like being me as a person, where like I really wanted to go invite. Like that was just like really frustrating to deal with. Like because I don't have the invite. I don't have that thing on my profile that says I was invite, means like, well, yeah, I guess you're not invite then. You're gonna stay in advance for now.
Do you think that's important for the state of the game, or like competitive, or do you think that's a self-interest thing for you?
I mean, it's almost definitely a self-interest thing. Like it's 100% a self-interest thing. But I think like it would motivate players who like would not be placed in invite based solely on their name. Like if they had to like look at, like if they had to perform in scrims, and they had to like take it seriously in scrimmages and like actually try in scrims,
Right.
that would change like how they approach the game, because that otherwise they couldn't just get a free ticket and invite because they've been there last season, right?
So, how do you feel about the process of moving up in RGL, and how do you feel about advanced?
I think I like the concept of the team, of like the team that wins the div automatically getting moved up. That's awesome. It makes sense, right? The problem is like invite is like advanced, and invite is more or less a bottleneck, because you can't go anywhere higher than invite. Like the team that won invite last season is just going to replay invite. So in the end, if you just keep the system the way it is, you're going to end up with like 30 teams in invite, because teams just keep winning. And like obviously that's not how it's happening. Like in practice it doesn't work like that. But on paper, it's going to end up with just invite being a huge div, because everyone keeps moving up as long as teams keep getting made and dying and stuff like that.
How about advanced in main?
Like advanced, they did a forum or like a poll, right, for how playoffs is going to work in advanced, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Is it going to be? I don't remember if it's round robin or Swiss, but like I think advanced is an interesting div. Ever since the challenger thing happened, advanced has been very strange, because advanced used to be, right, where that was where like the second best teams were at. Like those were the teams where like they could maybe compete in invite, but they can't really, so they're just in advanced. And advanced was still a very competitive division. But when challenger happened, challenger replaced advanced as that, and then advanced just became second main, because main was so large at this point. And then they removed challenger, which I don't know why. I still don't know why that happened. Like I think you can either have challenger or you just never put it in the first place. Because once you removed it, now you've put the advanced, like challenger and advanced, back together, and what you have in advanced is half of advanced is now like actual advanced, the other half is just main 2, and they just get all, and like this, like half of the div is just getting rolled completely. Like that was my David Redface moment. Like when David Redface was leading a team, that's how that team won advanced, because we were put in that div with like 10 main teams more or less, and it was like an absolute mess. And that's how we won. Like that's how I have a gold medal in advance, because it was like the freest season of my life, because we just were playing main teams, because they didn't know what they were doing, and like stuff like that. So I think like that whole thing kind of screwed over advanced a lot. So now we just have you know, it's not really a concise skill where like the top of advanced is only a little bit better than the bottom of advanced. It's not like the top of advanced is like miles ahead of bottom. Like it's more or less a mess now.
How do we fix it?
Yeah, and like the only way to fix it is just like demote half the teams back to main. Like it's just kind of hard to do, and then main would become bloated, and they had the same problem over and over again. So like Challenger, I think, was kind of a mistake as far as like RGL goes, but you know, it is what it is, and they could have done it much worse. So I'm not really that upset about it.
Do you think it'd be worth it for skill to shuffle back down to main to make main more difficult, and then to just make it like a slower progression progress, so people are more prepared as they move up in divs?
Yeah, like I think if the trade-off for advanced becoming more competitive is main becoming a larger division, then that's fine. Like main as a division, I think that should be the biggest one, right? Because that's
Right.
it's like a bell curve, right? Main is like right in the middle, and that's where it should be the most teams should be at.
I think that'd make main more competitive over time as well, right? Like it would filter skills.
Yeah, no,
back
absolutely. Yeah, it would have the same problem as advanced did when Challenger got removed. But once that's like after a few seasons, it would probably get more or less filtered out.
Right.
And like it would still be the biggest div, but that's fine, because main is where most of the player base.
You
should
want
be
the middle
at.
div to be the biggest, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the bell curve. So, I think that would be that's what I was suggesting as a solution. But of course, you know, everyone has their own opinion on how it should be fixed. And
I think
whatnot,
that's definitely a fair one. So, what do you think the future for RGL is? Do you think that gets fixed? How does RGL progress from here? Like, what's their next play?
I mean, well, now that Wilmatic's out, it's going to be interesting, because I want to see how the division, or how the league, I guess, adapts to a different leadership and stuff like that.
Actually,
so I can't really say for sure until that happens.
Do you want to talk about leadership for a bit? Like, how do you feel about the league under various leaderships?
I can't really say, honestly. Like I didn't really have a whole lot of interaction with league admins and whatnot, and who was in charge. Like I couldn't really say the different eras of RGL leadership. I just know Wilmatic wasn't great at it. Like there were a few decisions he made. Like got a blast, the team that I was on with Ginseng and I guess Nerdaloid and all them, where he banned Shay off Sniper. We're pretty sure he banned Shay off. Like his reasoning for banning Shay off Sniper was that Shay had like 2 seasons in Invite, but he went like 1-6 both seasons. And he was like, he cannot play Sniper in Advanced, which we thought was ridiculous, because Wilmatic was also a Sniper in Advanced. So I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that's not how it worked. But if you looked at it from like a third point of view, from a different perspective, like okay, Wilmatic banned Shay because he knew he couldn't beat Shay in an SVS. Like that was why he did it. And that was kind of ridiculous. And that ended up killing God of Blast. But God of Blast was probably gonna die anyways. But I think it's really difficult for RGL. Like I don't know if they've changed this at this point, but like the fact that mods and admins can directly interfere, like that they can play in the div that they mod or admin for, is kind of ridiculous. And I'm not saying like they shouldn't be able to play the game that they mod for, but like they shouldn't have direct control over the division that they're playing in, which I think is kind of ridiculous that's how it works in the first place. So I think that that's my biggest issue with RGL leadership, is just like their implicit biases being shown a lot of the time.
Right. Okay.
But you know that's just gonna come from people who volunteer and aren't getting paid for it. Like they're gonna do whatever they can to get something out of it, which is fair. You know, it's just a little frustrating.
Oh no, for sure, it's good to talk about it. So, what are some interesting team experiences that you've had?
So I think the first one I had was Blue 99's quote-unquote return team. That was a really funny team. The creator of the most base looking for player post I've ever seen in my entire life. But like I can't really talk that bad about him, because he did give me like my break into like maining Pyro in Advanced, right? Like I'd mained, like I'd played pyro in main, and I'd subbed for advanced, but I'd never actually been a main pyro, and I was having a really hard time like for teams like getting tryouts because they never heard of me, right? Like I was some random main player who subbed twice, like they never heard of me.
Who are you?
Exactly. So like the fact that he gave me the spot on his team, which was awesome. Like we went 4-6, which is fine. It's advanced. It was our first season. But Blue 99's like theory on advanced was he came back in his LFP post. Like within the first couple of sentences, he wrote, "I just want to get a few easy wins under my belt before I go back to invite," and that was like incredible the way he wrote that. I think he deleted it now, which is a damn shame because that post was awesome. And then he went 4-6, so it was awesome. But that was definitely my first interesting team was Blue 99. Like, because I'd literally never heard of him until then. Like, I know he's apparently an old player and everything, but as one of the newer players, all I knew was like he just was decent and he kind of knew what he was doing. But of course, like, the whole the whole looking for some easy wins on my belt before I go back to invite. I'm predicting we are gonna win, like, easily advanced. It was the funniest shit I ever read. Like that was a good team. Like I met some friends on that team and stuff like that. Still went 4-6. It was awesome. That was the return of Flow too. It was awesome. Actually, we went 4-3. Okay, we went actually above even. And like that was, and I think that was the season that actually changed how playoffs is made, because we went 4-3, and we played like we played like the top 4 teams in the division, and we beat one of them. So we should have been in playoffs, right? But there was a second team that was a main move up that also went 4-3, but 2 of their wins were forfeit wins, and they had a like inarguably much easier schedule than we did. So they went to playoffs because they beat us on by 2 points, 2 match points. And everyone kind of realized, like, even though it was Flow and no one really cared that much, everyone was kind of like, that's a little stupid that the main move up team, which is arguably a lot worse than Flow, got into playoffs ahead of Flow.
I think it's a .66 actually, unless you meant in a head-to-head match.
No, because we never fought them. We had arguably it was Crit Sandwich who had .66 more, because we dropped 1.66 and they only dropped 1 point. So they had .66 more points than we did, and they went to playoffs and we didn't, and we never fought them, and they fought all of like the easiest teams and got 2 forfeit wins.
Sounds like a skill issue on your part.
I know, absolutely was. I still distinctly remember when we threw a Swiftwater match on the Flow because someone tried to repush second. Anyways, not gonna mention that one. We're gonna move on. But like, yeah, so like I think that was like the start of forum posts, and like people were like, yeah, that's kind of stupid that Flow got screwed out of playoffs by a MMA move up team. And I think that changed the rules on how on how like points were awarded based on like forfeit wins and stuff. But then after Flow, I went directly to Guerrilla Warfare, which was the David Redface team. Which was the funniest shit, because like David was like, at this point David was 13, right? And David was leading a team in RGL in advance as a 13-year-old, and he just does things, and like he's not stupid, right? He's not like an idiot, but he just does things that a 13-year-old does. Like he it was just a very strange team. And like Townsy was essentially a co-leader but not rostered. He made that team.
The coach.
Like Guerrilla Warfare was actually like a good team. Like it actually had some good players. Like it was me. Like we had Mountain on Sniper. We had Waxy Demo. We had Sawala Soldier. JR Medic. Like we had a lot of really good players on that team. It was just that it was led by David Redface. So. Like that was a really fun team. Like that's where I met Mountain. I think he's sniping for my team. Like yeah, we had like Craft Kitty on Spy. Like that whole team was like unironically good. It was just led by David Redface.
So can you explain to me the context of David Medface?
David Medface was, I think that was a ringer. That was a ringer scrim. That was just a scrim where it was definitely, it was absolutely a pug scrim. I think you were on Pyro and I was sniping for that. You were there. And then like he went medic for some reason. He was our med. And then his mouse quote unquote disconnected and he backed up off a cliff and jumped, and it was the funniest shit I ever seen in my entire life. And it's still the video that has like of all the videos of all my YouTube channel, it's the one that has the most views, and it's awesome every time I watch it. It was so stupid. Like it was 2 a.m. when I was editing this. They were like the entire team was in the Discord. Like we were all like collabing on it. It was absolutely ridiculous. But that team I think was like one where I had the most fun on. Like that team, because it was advanced underneath Challenger, where it was like pretty much just all main teams, and that was like we 3-0'd basically everyone. I think we dropped like three rounds I think total. And it was absolutely, we like won grand finals. It was like the easiest season of my life.
Did you miss that team?
I think a little bit. Like It was definitely like my most fun as a season, like because we didn't really have to try that hard to win because we were in the
Right.
wrong div. Like we were beating like Yi and them, like the teams that were in Challenger, we were beating like half of them, and that was like my first. That was my first instance of like an RGL admin kind of screwing us out of a division because like we were beating half of the teams in Challenger and they put us in advance anyways because none of us had invite experience. So like and David Redface was leading it and like no one's really gonna unfortunately because he was 13 no one was really gonna respect a team led by David Redface. So we never really got put in. We never really went Challenger. But
Would you play on another team with David Redface?
I probably would, just not one led by him. Like he wasn't a bad NG. Like he was a good NG. He was just 13. Like there's not a whole there's not a whole lot you can do when a man is 13 years old playing RGL. So yeah, but that was funny. Those were like my two. I guess those were my two very interesting teams.
Favorite teammates?
Favorite teammates, definitely Mountain. I'll say Cutomus because like he was the one who did like OG Train Station. Like he was the leader of that team. And then he brought it back for season 10, which was my first season in invite. Finally, was Train Station where we like won qual, or I guess we did win quals on a technicality because one of the teams died. And then that's how the imposters, or not that was the imposter season, no, but like that like we went 0-7 my first season, and but that was like the most fun 0-7 you could have. Like we didn't really care that much. We were just happy to be in invite and like at least competing. We took a round off Casper's team on Steel by 8Eing them in like a minute 30. That was the funniest shit I've ever seen in my entire life. The fact that worked.
Any percent C run.
Yeah, it was ridiculous that happened. That was like our only half we won the entire season. But yeah.
Alright. Are there any like community initiatives or like projects that people are working on that you find are interesting or like that could be helpful?
As far as community projects go, I don't really know a whole lot about any of those going on. Yeah, like I'm not really in tune with a lot of like the general community as a whole.
How about Vibers Vario's experimental maps thing? If you're in that.
Oh yes, I remember doing that a little bit. I'm definitely down to do that. I hate Lakeside this is more so because I hate Lakeside with a passion, and I would do anything to replace it with something else. So like I'm definitely down for more experimental maps. Like Vigil, I love Vigil's a really fun map, and like that's an experimental map where it was because it's not in like the normal stuff. Like all those like newer maps coming out, I'm a big fan of because it allows for more theory crafting, more different holds, unique like ways to play the map. I would like a map, like a payload map, other than Upward, where you get to actually hold first. So, like stuff like that. But yeah, I'm very excited for that.
So what's the future for for BBL's team? What's in the near future? What are your plans? What's your goal?
So we're pretty sure we can at least get more than one win this season, probably. We've been playing like Yi and them. We're going pretty much even with Run It Back. We were going even with we were going even with Amigos before they died. And then we're beating like Yi consistently. Like I don't know what happened to Yi, but they've become a lot worse, and I don't know what happened specifically. Because it's a lot of the same players, but for some reason they're just a worse team now, and we're like consistently 3-0ing them. So I don't know what happened there.
It's the haircut. It became Yi. Yes,
it's true. It's true. But yeah, so hopefully we go 2-5. The pattern says I went 0-7 first season, right? 1-6 the second season. Now I'm gonna go 2-5. That's how it works.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll see how it goes.
What are your plans for the near future as a player and out of game?
As a player, I mean, just to keep like I want to like place an invite. Like it's been my like goal to get to invite ever since I started playing. And to have gotten there was like I was super happy to do it, obviously. But like I'll just keep moving on to like I'm like one of like I've always had like this idea of like being, if not one of the like best, just like recognized as he's pretty good. Like that's pretty much all I want at this point. So I figured the best way to do that is just try and keep doing as best as I can. Yeah, more or less do that. And also it's really funny to to do my stupid ass hold W into the enemy combo plays in invite, because every time they don't work, my team yells at me, but when they do work, it's really funny. So
How do you feel about the jetpack? Do you use it all?
The jetpack. All right. Hot take. I know, Sonic. I know you're a big fan of the jetpack. The detonator is the jetpack, but better.
Nope, wrong. They both have their use cases.
No. The jetpack, while it does allow you to get in a lot faster and a lot farther, It also comes with the complete cost of a secondary, which means your entire damage is resorted to just WM1.
And that's why you
which
run it
means-
for specific lives, for like
Yeah,
specific
no,
crit
for
save
sack
purposes.
waves, sure. Like for sack
Yeah,
waves, sure. But
you just
like,
gotta
the
use your
detonator-
brain, right?
Yeah, I've seen what you've done. I respect it.
Ah,
Listen, I
alright,
respect
good,
it. I
good.
respect it.
It's a
but I will
tool.
say the detonator has a much more general use case and can still
Right,
achieve pseudo similar results to the jetpack. Like the jetpack,
Yeah.
lets you bomb straight in,
Also-
but the detonator you just have to walk a little bit and then bomb straight in.
Fun
you know?
fact, like sometimes the detonator's even flat out better than the jetpack for bombs, like on Vigil Second, for instance, when you don't want to telegraph it or go too high, because here's the thing that like some of the European pyros get wrong, right? They run it full time, but then that tells the enemy team they have
Oh my god.
some of them do, and that tells the enemy team, right, if you're running it for too long, that you have to be going for something with it, otherwise you're literally just losing value.
Yeah, you just lose a secondary, and like
Yeah.
the detonator, it also lets you from like more mobile. Like it lets you jump in different ways. The jetpack
Right.
is more or less a huge
Trebuchet.
arc, right? And you
It's a
can jump
trebuchet.
It's a trebuchet. It's a trebuchet. Yeah, and
So-
but, like the detonator allows you to make smaller jumps, less noise. It's a lot less telegraphed, and it's a lot more. And you have a secondary still.
Right.
Like you still have a detonator, which is a good weapon.
I will say, you do get the passive knockback increase, which can be very funny and actually pretty nice.
Absolutely, but like the thing is, like air blast inherits momentum, right? So if
Right.
you're bombing with a detonator, and you air blast someone before you hit the ground, they're gonna inherit that momentum and go flying. So like
Yep.
you can more or less achieve similar results with a detonator. All I'm gonna say, the detonator is a better secondary.
No, I'd agree, definitely. It's
like
just like
90% of the times.
so there are some things that jetpack is really good for, like especially if there's like a lot of curved architecture. Like you just gotta analyze the map. You know what I mean?
Analyze the map. That's
You
fair.
gotta get the arcing down. A lot of people don't, and I feel like it gets a needlessly bad rap. Like I think it's okay in certain cases as well.
No, I think the jetpack is okay in certain cases, but those cases are way too certain for me to
Right.
like, because like the detonator can more or less accomplish the same thing.
Like all I'm saying is,
It is slightly worse at it, but you attempt you.
Oh, no, it's
but, like,
pretty
if it
worse at
costs
some
you,
of
like,
them.
Walking a little. If it costs you walking a little before jumping in, like if you because you can det jump from like on product, right? You can jump from your cliff
Yeah.
up to Pride Rock, and then you can bomb from Pride Rock into their pocket for free, as opposed to the jetpack, which you can do from anywhere else. But like it requires
Yeah.
you a little bit more.
or I'd say the best example would be like on Swiftwater, where it's like you literally can't with the detonator. If for some reason
How
you
so?
are doing that.
On which point?
Around second, the bridge. You can kind of just like curve around, land from behind. But I have done that before
That's
to the second
fair.
best advanced team, Joey Lemon's
Okay.
team. But
Okay, on the Troy Lemons team.
but
Yeah,
I
mean,
will
I gue-
say,
okay, I guess that's fair, but you can also do the same thing with like you don't like if you're already allowed to jetpack in, you're also more or less allowed to
no.
walk forward and
Here's the thing.
detonator in.
Not really, because I jumped around. Okay, from upper to the far bridge, like to the other side near the health and ammo packs to kill an engineer, back to the
Yeah.
window to kill a medic. It was like a 4-prong. It was like a 3 or 4 kill because I could just jump around from the high ground.
Okay, yeah, but you could all I don't know.
No, it
it's
takes
just
a lot
it's
more
just- I'm not
time with
saying
the
it's
detonator.
bad. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying the detonator is better in like
Right.
99.9% of cases. Like
I'm
that
just saying-
one case is where it's better for jumping between places. But if you're allowed to do that anyways, you can also just WM1.
Not really. The jetpack allows you to greatly enhance your mobility to get WM1s in the first place.
Yeah, but like if you're allowed
look,
to be
Rez.
jumping around though.
All I'm saying is the jetpack is the best at capitalizing on that weakness.
That's fair.
But all I'm saying is you gotta ponder the orb. That's what I specialize in doing.
Oh my god.
I'm always, when I bring up the jetpack, I'm pondering the orb. I'm like, okay,
Oh my
you gotta
goodness.
visualize it. That's all I'm
Well,
saying.
you gotta visualize. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Also, I just can't stand the jetpack because normally when I press 2, I have a flare gun. But then when I press 2, I have to spend 30
Skill
seconds
issue.
waiting for me to pull out a jetpack for no reason, and I can't
But-
shoot it.
Hey, as long as you start switching before you land, it's fine. Like the
Oh my
switch
God.
speed isn't an issue. But
No, it's like I'm constantly switching between weapons, right? But then when I press 2, I gotta wait 30
So
seconds.
what you're saying
to
is-
pull out like
Hold on.
handles and then put them away again.
so what you're saying is you use the degreaser as a crutch and you're over reliant on its switch speed benefit.
No. I'm just saying the jetpack has a 30-second like switch
Yeah.
time. It sucks, even with the degreaser. It's terrible.
All I'm saying is it enhances your mental. You gotta pre-plan it.
It's just the mental. Okay, I think it just decreases the mental of everyone involved. If you ask
Except for me. Except for me.
Except for you. Yeah. Okay. It's just a mental. It's just a mental destroyer.
Yes.
Oh my
For both your
goodness.
team, yourself, and the enemy team. But
That's-
okay. What? Reminder: just ponder the warp. That's all I'm saying.
Oh my god.
But
Oh my
yeah,
god.
definitely more niche case. But I think there are some good times. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what's your plan for the near future outside of game? You got anything interesting going on in your life?
I mean, I'm back from college, so I'm on a laptop right now, which is fun.
Yo.
But, like, I've sort of Frankensteined a setup into a pseudo PC where I've just more or less used the laptop as a PC and plugged in like a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse to it. So it's just a PC now, but like it runs worse. So and I only really need to run TF2, and TF2 is not that demanding, so it's fine. But
Does it impact your performance in scrims?
It did when I didn't have the monitor. When I was playing on the like tiny ass screen, it actually did impact me because I felt so like it felt so hectic all of the time.
Dude,
but now that I have a monitor, it's fine.
You like drop down a division or two, right?
No. I would say I stayed the same. It's just pyro. So pyro, like dropping down a division on pyro is like dropping like one more death than usual.
Right. Okay. Like one more med death.
Yeah, one more med death. Whoops. Man, I could have gotten that if I was not on a laptop. Oh well.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits to being pyro is that when you're playing bad, the rest of your team can just keep doing fine.
So what's your advice to new pyro players? Like, what's the biggest thing you think? What helped you to know the most?
It's not your fault every time your med dies.
Okay.
Like that was specifically my issue because my med would always complain when they got backstabbed, and I was going through like the entirety of like I am like convinced that it was always my fault, and like that's one of the downsides to not having like a pyro mentor, I guess, to like tell me like no, your med can just turn around sometimes. But like one of the biggest differences, like my med now matches, who's like one of my favorite players to play with, just because she will turn around and not blame me for dying to the spy. Because, like, yeah, it's your job to deny the spy from getting in the first place. But if he's already in, the only way the best way for your men to not die is to just turn around. So, don't take it to heart when your team is dying to spy that much. Like, yeah, obviously you're not spy checking enough or something. Like, something's wrong with the way you're playing that the spy is able to consistently get in all the time. But sometimes they're just better, or sometimes your team's just not turning around, right? Like, it's not always your fault. So just don't blame yourself too hard.
How do you feel about chasing for spy?
So I hate the spy sickle with an absolute passion because it prevents me from doing anything once I catch him. Like, if you catch the spy on Spycicle, it doesn't matter because you can't get set on fire for the next 10 seconds. So unless you get super lucky with like your tracking, like and guessing where the spy is going to go, and you can keep setting him on fire, then you can chase him, and then it's fine. But if you hit him once and you lose him, you're not going to find him again because it's the Spycicle, and it's practically impossible to do.
Do you think it's usually better for something like Scout to be the one chasing anyways?
Absolutely. Like if I set the spy on fire and he's not on Spycicle and he's running away. Like, if I'm close, like, if he's not running too far from my med, I'll do it. But if he's like, I'll say I'm product, we're behind rock, and I caught him, and he's going back to cliff, I'm gonna send a scout after him. I can't, like, afford to leave my med there, because product and, like, Koth maps especially, your med is so susceptible to bombs when you leave.
Astral?
The spy can just call, hey, the pyro's chasing me, and the soldier goes, alright, say less, and then he's in your med dead. Your med's dead.
Asheville.
So.
Asheville.
Yeah, Asheville, actually Asheville.
Pyro away, insta-bomb.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So... yeah, so like in that scenario, like it's just like if you know the soldier's dead or not in a position to bomb yet, then you can say okay. Like if you know for a fact the soldier's like on the other side of the map, then you're like okay, I can chase the spy and for like these 3 seconds go chase the spy and come back. But
so it's important to just like keep in mind like what enemies are up, like what they might be doing, and then to try and like understand what opportunities they might see based off of what you do.
Yeah, like the thing on the top of your screen that tells you who's alive and who's dead on the enemy team is like the most important piece of information you can have, because you can know if the spy is dead and you don't have to spy check, or you know if the soldier's dead and you can go afford to go chase the spy. Like you can know things, like you can predict when, if you see like the spy has just come up, you can predict when he's gonna be crossing and try and catch him. Like on Asheville, like if I see the spy come up, I'll count to like 10 seconds and the spy is crossing lower. Well, I check point so that my teammates will go lower and check lower. Like if I have an engineer or a soldier lower, that'll start spanning around while I'm watching point. Because Asheville, it's like impossible for the spy to get through other than those 2 angles.
Right.
So like that kind of stuff, like that kind of like use of information is like the biggest thing you can do.
So would you say like in general, it's just like you don't want to blame yourself in the moment. It's important to like keep self-confidence so you can keep track of these mental things like while you're playing.
I mean, like I would just say, just like don't blame yourself to keep your mental up, right? Like
Right.
I had like when I was cut from OG train station, like I had a moment where I was like, man, am I really bad at pyro? My med's dying to spy a lot. And it was like I think when I played a pug with like Rogue or someone, they were like, oh, I was like, they died to spy. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And she was like, it's my fault. Don't worry, it's a spy. And I was like, wait, it was her fault. And like that was like an awakening moment where I was like, oh. I'm not bad. My team is
Right, like
or
normally
something
it's
like
like
that.
normally it's like both parties are at fault a bit, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
entirely on you or entirely on
No,
them.
yeah, like it is my fault that the spy was able to get
Hmm.
in the first place, and I wasn't watching for it.
So
But they also just have to turn around for
would
it.
you
So
say like it would help a lot though if that sort of stuff happens to just like talk to your team afterwards about it and just like get an idea of what's up, how they feel about it, and just sort of work together rather than letting it get you in specific down or feeling isolated from them?
oh, absolutely, like it's hard if your team's just blaming you for it. Like if your team's like Pyro, what the fuck are you doing? It's hard to be like that's not my fault because they've already made
Right.
up their mind that it is. But like stuff like just talking to your team in general is a good idea, right? Like that's how teams are gonna get better. Like that's how you get the teamwork together, team cohesion, and stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah, I would just say like it's a mixture of both, really.
No, that definitely makes sense, yeah. And is that definitely something that like sort of you experienced over time gradually that was nice like playing on a lot of the same teams? Or like
Yeah,
take for instance
uh,
force comp format?
yeah. So like definitely like when I started playing matches, that was when I was like, okay, like this is like I'm actually like confident in my pyro. Before like I was constantly terrified of like my KD and like my damage taken and like my deaths and like my med deaths and like I was constantly obsessing over the logs and everything and like that was just really not a good way to play pyro because when you're constantly concerned about that you're not paying attention to the game and you're playing for logs, right?
Right.
And that's not playing to win, that's playing for logs. So you just kind of have to ignore all that and just say like, all right, I have one job and it's my men must live. I must predict when the solar's gonna bomb and I must predict when the spy is gonna be in. And if I do that, I'll be fine, right? Like,
Right.
and if I fuck it up, it happens. It's a video game. Like things are gonna go wrong. Your med is going to die. You cannot do anything about that. So, like it's just like stuff like that, really.
Right. Do you find yourself like talking to older Pyre players, like agreeing or disagreeing with them? Anything? Like, what's your opinion on the older Pyres as a newer one?
I really only ever like the older pyros that I'll talk to are really like the ones that I'm playing against, like American,
Right.
or
And
Pyrus,
what are
and
your interactions with them like?
really, I would say like Pyro is not that different as far as like play like you can do with play style wise. Like yeah, you can use a different flamethrower, use a different secondary, but it's really the same thing, right? Like it's spy check all the time, it's deny bombs. So like of course it's just like I don't know. Like my discussions are more or less based around what what the fuck was your spy doing that he was able to get in like while I was spy checking? Like what was he doing that I couldn't like adapt to, and stuff like that. Like it's less so more like discussing the finer points of pyro play style because it's just like yeah, were you holding mouse one enough? Okay, cool. So
Pyre lore. What's your sensitivity? How much are you twirling?
yeah, my twirling. Let me tell you, S tier. Let me tell you,
Uh huh.
but.
Uh huh. The techniques, you know. You got the
Listen,
techniques.
Listen, the new tech, you just type in plus right and then walk around. It's
Right.
crazy. But yeah.
Do you ever find yourself just trying to view something like the eye from the eyes of a spy? Like, okay, I'm doing this, the spy might do this, or like this is where the spy might cross from. And is it sort of the thing where playing other classes sort of helps you understand?
Yeah, I mean, like in the beginning of my pyro career, like I was like they were trying. It was like this super scuffed, like I am scrim, and they were like, "All right, we're trying out a spy and a pyro, but we don't know which of you is gonna be which. So, Rez, you play spy this round, and you play pyro next round." I'm like, okay. So I played spy against like a pyro who sort of knew what he was doing, and I was like, holy shit, wait. When he's like spy checking, he's not trying to catch me. He's just trying to like deny the spy from wanting to go there. And that was
Right.
also a point where I was like, wait a fucking second. I've been thinking about this all wrong. And so like that was like that scenario. Like and like from since then I've like actually tried to like look at it from a spy's POV. Like I'm like, all right, if I'm spy checking right now, he's not going to be in, which means he's probably going to be on flank. And then I call like spy's gonna be on flank in a couple seconds and stuff like that. And like I'll check and I know. Like I'm product in Asheville, like I know the obvious spots. Like I'm probably like on Asheville, it's like behind the barrels, like next to the box, like on back of ramp and stuff like that. And like lower on under bats and stuff. And like product, it's like Japan and like underneath and like dropping off from China and like just pistoling from cliff and stuff like that. So usually like if you're because Pyro doesn't have a whole lot to do, right? There's not a whole lot of brain going into spinning around shooting fire all the time. So you can usually like you sometimes like during that I'll like think about like I bet the spy is gonna go this direction or something like that, right? Like it's stuff like that where you can just more or less kind of spend the time trying to predict where they're going to go and like calling out your team where you think the spy is going to be, and like that kind of stuff like from a spy's POV like really helps me as far as like knowing what they'll do. Like they'll cross like they like to cross Japan, like they could like to cross through dog bread and stuff like that. So yeah,
Right.
definitely thinking about stuff from a spy's POV helps out a lot.
Okay, yeah, and that's sort of something that, like, going back to an earlier topic that, like, playing pugs can help with.
Yeah, like, absolutely. Like I'll main class in pugs just because I'm not good at any. I'm like a pyro one trick at this point. Like I'm not good enough at any other class to play pyro or to play any other class at an invite level other than pyro. So I'll be main class like all the time. And like honestly, pugs are a pretty good way because like people play like pugs really stupid. Like people do like some unhinged spy stuff. Like I got boys like just like standing on point dead ringer like with just trying to pistol my med. I'm like okay, what do I even do against that? But like it's a really good like just like way to practice and like learn how to play against different spy
Alright.
play styles. I guess.
Okay. Are there any other sorts of things you'd want to talk about or that you're particularly interested in, or do you think that's about it for this one?
I honestly don't really have anything else that comes to mind. I think that's a pretty good, pretty solid discussion. I will say, I feel like everyone's gonna kill me if I don't mention the reserve shooter like once, because it's kind of like
The res thing, do it, do it, do
the
it!
res thing. Okay, yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, my name Rez does come from the reserve shooter because it used to be some like edgy shit that I've forgotten at this point. But like I knew a friend whose name was Tribes who got his name from the Tribalman show. I'm like, huh, what's my favorite gun? And I remember the reserve shooter exists, and I thought it was kind of cool. I'm like, okay, I guess my name will be Rez, and that's how it is. So my name comes from the reserve shooter, and like the reserve shooter is not like a good choice as a secondary. Like the shotgun is objectively better, but like there are it's like something with jetpack, right? Like there are very specific scenarios where I will easily trade the two bullets just to have a 20% faster like switch speed. Like that switch speed is unironically sometimes like the difference between life and death because I can switch to it quick enough to just like obliterate somebody. And the mini crits are also really funny when you do it to a soldier. So, and it's not like a bad weapon because it's still just the shotgun minus two shots. Like it's still good.
Right.
It's just not, like objectively worse than the shotgun. But yeah, so that was kind of what I made, I guess, more or less my brand on because like it just comes back to like the score shot thing, right? Where I felt like the need to be at least somewhat different,
Right.
has some sort of thing to be known for. And
Uh,
it turned out to be the reserve shooter because I just didn't want to run the shotgun.
you didn't
So-
ever think about the jetpack?
the jet. No, I need a secondary so bad, bro. Pyro's secondary.
What if I
is his
told you?
primary.
What if I told you your mind was the secondary with the thermal thruster?
My mind was secondary. I think my mind's like tertiary at this point, bro.
That's fair. Alright, so should I rename myself to Thermal then?
Thermal.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That does sound like a pirate player name.
No. The best pirate name is Thruster. Just gonna name yourself Thruster at this point.
No!
You got a full send it listening.
No! Alright, I think that's good for this one.
All right. Well, yeah, it was good talking to you. I appreciate it.
Good
This
talking
was,
to you
this was
as
a good interview.